Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you another Age of Sigmar battle report. I'm still testing out Age of Sigmar, and I'm trying to introduce the game to some of my some of the local gamers that I know and I've gotten to know at a variety of different game stores that I go to, and some of them are are pretty avid tournament players, and some of them obviously have mixed feelings about Age of Sigmar, and there's a few obviously loyalists to 8th edition or people that are upset, like many in the community, and some of them are very open and willing to give it a shot, to check it out, just like myself. But you know, they've read the PDFs, but they haven't really taken the deep dive and played any games. So one of the better and players in the local area, he's a tournament player, Joe. He's also organized some tournaments, some one-day tournaments at the only game in town. He was more than happy to go and give this a shot. He's got a bunch of armies, and one of them is a high elf army, and it's pretty nicely painted too. So we tried, we decided to do this in a relatively small manner. So we decided just 4 war scrolls aside, we each would pick a wizard, whether that's our general or not, because it's not required that you make a character, a hero, your general. It just says model, so it could be one of the guys in an infantry or cavalry unit. It could be any model. We still did the default and put it as our casters being the general, mainly because I think the casters, because of some of the abilities, the inspirational presence and spells, needed to be centrally located around the rest of our troops anyway. And both of us were trying to see if we can get a game that looked and felt like 8th edition, but worked more like obviously what Age of Sigmar is with those mechanics. But if it was, rather than some of the early games that a lot of people have played and that I've played, where it just seemed to be clusters and skirmish, clouds of troops, and then it really was kind of messy. To see if we can use some of the conventions that were easy to move and easy to see and easy to manipulate with trays from 8th edition, but obviously utilizing the mechanics and the pylons and whatnot from Age of Sigmar. So modest game, pretty small, and just trying to get down the mechanics. And I didn't take some pictures about whose turn it was, so I'm going to go and kind of wing this from memory. This is the first of several games I'm having over the course of this weekend. I'm actually introducing and helping demo and showcase some of the rules to 3 different people that I know over the course of this weekend, getting games in for myself, but also seeing if some of these players might be interested in continuing to play Age of Sigmar. They are all interested in testing it out, and we'll see how that goes. So this will be the first of maybe, 4 or 5 games. So this is the deployment phase, and as you can see on the opposite side of the table, we didn't even use terrain for this. We had set up all these terrain with the intention of getting a couple of games in. I was kind of limited in time because I took my family to go see Ant-Man. Decent movie, and it certainly was fun. So we decided, let's leave the terrain out of this and just kind of get used to the mobility and the motions of the movement is really the kind of thing I think most people, as well as the how the phases work in combat, but just really try to get that down without any other inhibitions. So we each had, as you can see, 3 different blocks plus a character. Now we didn't have to deploy the characters away from these blocks of troops, these clusters of troops, but we both did. Just because they stood out, and it just seemed to be the natural thing. But we didn't get into any shenanigans like plopping them down in the midst of a block of troops to protect them from hand to hand. And as you can see, he has, I think, about 20 of his archers. He's got 5 Illyrian Reavers. This is a very mobile list, by the way, and cav heavy. So there's 5 of them. They have 2 wounds. They can still shoot. They can shoot. He has looks like 10 silver helms. So this is basic core. But the silver helms, of course, have 2 wounds too. So they're pretty. I wouldn't necessarily call them elite, but they are no slouches. They have good armor. They can certainly pack a punch. What I have down at the bottom is you can't barely see my necromancer, and he has the one ability that I never used throughout the entire game, which is the Van Hale's Dance. This just was better options, or I was failing a lot of the tests. But it allows you to get an extra pile-in, and an extra set of attacks for one unit within range. So I have 10. I didn't go crazy, of course, with mine as well. I think I outnumber him by about maybe 20 models, but not enough to get a sudden death victory. And we both, decided we were going to try and rein this in a little bit. But I wanted to get some advantages for instance, multiple shooting with my archers, which if you have with skeletons, the skeleton warriors, if you get more, 20, they each get an extra attack. You get 30, they get another extra attack, which is crazy. And for archers, they get extra shots if they're higher than 20. A lot of the archer units, not just the skeleton archers, have this. I have a block of 20 zombies. Great unit, obviously a core unit, but one of the great things about zombies, they start off really crappy. You need 6s to hit, 6s to wound, but see, the whole thing about zombies is that as you get more of them, and they get better. So as you merge them, and you get, I forget the exact number, but I think it's if you get like 30 of them, for every 10 after the first 10, you get +1 to hit, +1 to wound. And that's pretty good. I mean, they don't have any armor to speak of, which makes sense. But they get this little horde benefit that the more of them there are, the better they are at hitting you, just because there's so many of them, and the better they are at wounding you, just because they're just ripping you down, pulling off your horses. They're just swarming all over you. And if you summon more of them, if they get within, I think it's within an inch, you can merge the units. So as you summon them, even if you take damage, you can still replenish the supply and get this benefit back. They start out really difficult to do anything with it. Just at 10 or 15, they're not going to be that scary. But once you get hordes of like 40, they can be pretty scary, especially if you can keep them at that point. 4s to hit, 4s to wound, and then they die and you can bring them back. My skeleton archers have a standard so that they can restore a die 6 at the beginning of every phase, just because they have the banner. These are mechanics that kind of replace some of the summoning aspects and the healing, some of the spells that restore wounds in 8th edition and earlier editions. Now they're just kind of default things if you include a standard bearer. And I have a block of 10 ghouls. Ghouls are great. They have multiple attacks. As you get more of them, I forget whether they get an extra attack, because I think they start with 2. I think if you get like 20 of them in a block, they get more attacks, I think the champion gets a +1 to wound. So that's nice. I don't have any synergies here. I know a lot of people who are probably playing vampire accounts are probably saying, why did you pick this? We didn't want to try and artificially take any advantage. I didn't want to go and pack in some of these formations that would have any extra abilities. It would confuse the game. This is a guy who knows obviously Warhammer very well, but he doesn't know Age of Sigmar. So I didn't want to stack the deck in my favor. We just want to throw some stuff on the table and see what happens. Even though he has all like old school core stuff, he's obviously got a lot more wounds than I do, as you can see. He's got even though I outnumber him by about 20, he's got about 15 additional wounds. So in retrospect, maybe we're about even in that regard, because I have about 20 more guys on the table, so maybe that's that many more wounds. But he's certainly packing better punch, and he's much faster than I am. Of course, I have the summoning capability, and I am playing, and regardless of what you guys think, this is how I am playing it, and this is how I believe I am playing, and just about everybody I know is playing, where the unit, this war scroll that you deploy, enacts the ability to summon that unit to any of the deathcasters on the table. I firmly believe that that's the way it was intended. It's certainly the way I read it. It says all deathcasters get that ability, but it says it on the war scroll. If you don't take the war scroll, it doesn't come into play. If you just take a wizard, it doesn't say anything about summoning on the wizard. Whatever you guys might think about that, that's how I'm playing it. And it does pull back a little bit on some of the crazy. Now, this doesn't apply to all armies. This is for vampire counts. I know there's some text that's a little bit different for lizardmen. I know there's some text that's a little bit different for demons. I will be addressing all that stuff. I know that a lot of people have been talking about how broken summoning is. I will tell you right now, this does help. And while it might not be the case for all armies, it certainly is more reasonable when it comes to vampire counts. It's still very powerful, but it is balanced. And even though the casting costs seem like they're kind of low, and they can be mitigated, even further by with certain combinations, you'll see how the game turns out. So here's our deployment. We roll for first turn. I get first turn. My first inclination is if there's going to be a combat, it's probably going to be when he charges me because I'm not going to get close enough in my turn. So I throw up a Mystic Shield on my my ghouls, and then I start moving up. Now this is where movement is a very big factor, especially in this game. This game has it used to be with the magic phase was very critical in the last game, and the really good players would really know how to use movement to their advantage to set up charges. I think it's even more critical in this game. So I'm measuring out that the ranges for his movement and the fact that he can charge. You get two different elements of movement in the game, and then a third in a pile-in. So you'll see how that works if you don't know the mechanics, but I'm trying to show. But as you can see, we're in pretty much 8th edition-like block formations. So I move everything up, just trying to get a gauge on everything. And I wanted to try and get within range with my archers to still be able to shoot. Obviously, I'm still not able to do that this turn, but I'm willing to take some losses because I know I can heal back some of those guys. Die 6 for every turn I get back. So I'm willing to accept some losses on those archers, and I feel like there's other threats that he might target. And they'll survive. They certainly won't get wiped out. So, moving on. His turn, he goes ahead and he casts a spell on his wizard, which I think gives him some bonuses to any units that are in 18 inches. He puts his immune to battle shock tests on his silver helms. And then he starts making his moves. He moves up his Illyrian Reavers, and he wants to obviously get them within range. And there, of course, he doesn't want to go too close. I don't think he wants to take a chance that I might be able to charge in the next turn, because he's certainly not going to be in range in this turn. If he did try it, he probably was in long range, because I wanted to entice him that he may need like an 11 or 12 and just try to get him to try it and hopefully fail it. But he didn't take the bait. So he moves in with his Reavers. He's obviously within range for a bow shot, and he aims at my my skeleton archers and wants to whittle them down. And I think it was like 4s or 5s to hit, 4s or 5s to wound, I forget what. And so he got I think he got 3 wounds, and I rolled 2 6s. So I lost 1 archer. I was thrilled about this. I still have over 20. I think I had like 24 archers. And then his archers, which I think they're 20 strong, start unloading, and I don't, he decides to take the once per game double shots, and a lot of archer units have these types of things. Most notably the Bretonnians, where they actually get quadruple shots. But he unloads with all the shots he can. He wants to try and whittle down this unit as much as possible, so he can get dominance when it comes to shooting. And he drops me a good portion. I think I lose like 10 archers from my skeleton unit. And then, of course, that's the end of his turn. And I had to take a battle shock test. And the undead have a very high bravery, and a lot of units, like a lot of armies, like the demons, have a high bravery. I think even the I forget if the lizardmen have a high bravery or if they have extra dice that they can roll. But having a high bravery for these types of units makes complete sense. You roll a die, you add it to the number of casualties that you have, and then you subtract your bravery. Whatever the difference is, you lose that many models. And this is key, because if you have elite units that have like multiple wounds, you lose the entire model, even though it has multiple wounds. It's not wounds. Now all my units have single 1 wound each, except for my necromancer, so I lose 2 archers. Not so bad, but now I'm getting into the point where I'm worried if the round of even die 6, if I roll decently well, I'm not going to get the bonuses for shooting, and he could start really thinning my ranks, especially if there's a charge and we get into hand to hand. So I roll for to get some. I think I got like 2, maybe 3 back, and at my turn. And no, my mistake. That was just me removing the rest of the my casualties. Okay, so that was shooting. He had some he had some special ability where he could do a little extra move with his Illyrian Reavers afterwards, after the shooting phase. I'm not really sure about the specifics, but it was a bonus, a special rule for the Illyrian Reavers. Here, I think what we have is he got the next turn, because I went first, so he got double turns. And one thing that you have to make sure you understand is, I like the randomness. I know that some people are trying to comp that out. I think it's ridiculous. Plan ahead. I know that I've heard at least one person who said you should plan as if you're not going to get the next turn because it'll actually help you with setting up stuff. I agree with that. But here he got the next turn, and you know what? It can hurt. It certainly can swing the game, but that randomness is exciting. It's interesting. Knowing that you're going to get the next turn is you definitively can plan for it, but not knowing it means you have to take things into consideration. And I like the idea that there's some instability in terms of how the game flow is going to go. Whether even if you're doing very well, suddenly things can swoop back in the other direction. So he goes and he moves with his Illyrian Reavers, swoops around to the side. And was able, he gets within 3 inches. That's where he has to stop. And these zones of control, 3 inches away from all your units, really have an impact. There's so much more depth when it comes to the complexity of this game when you think of where your units are and how they extend a certain amount of reach into an area of the battlefield that your opponent has to stop at. And if they want to move, they have to be concerned about that fact. And then there's also other things that you'll see where once you get into certain types of combats, the pile-in, which is not required, but if you pile in, you will be forced to move to the nearest enemy model, and you have to maintain unit cohesion. But that's the kind of thing you can bait an opponent and draw them in and tar pit them, or force them down certain alleys in certain areas, or deter them from certain areas with zone control, board control, because of these threat areas. Something that I think that to master this game, you got to master that. That's probably going to be one of the principal things that we're going to see deeper in this game as this game develops. So he goes ahead and puts himself in a position where his Silverhelms are going to go try to charge my ghouls, and he's going to go and try and charge my skeletons with his reavers, and of course try to thin me out with his archers. Good, solid plan. And I have my little infantry-like battle line, but I want to try and draw him in, because if I do draw him in between summoning and between my ability to now redirect whatever center unit I have to wherever the action is and try and double up on him, if I can put a hold on one side, I can overwhelm him on the other. That's pretty much my game plan. And if I can summon a couple of units, I can surround him and destroy him. So he goes and he shoots, plucks off a few more of my skeleton archers. Now, unfortunately, I have all these now lined up, consolidated bases, so that I, for ease of moving it, I'm using as many of these guys as I can. A lot of my unit fillers I can't, or I have to modify, or I'm going to throw into terrain pieces. But these I'm going to use until I need to. I mean, I have mixes and matches of them, and then the singular ones I'm going to use for pile-ins, for removals. But I'm trying to and keep those cohesive lines and keep these as much as possible. I got a bunch of them for just about every unit I have. And so I lose a couple of those, and then he goes and he shoots with his main archery block. He shoots, and he's still got his 20, so I think he's getting +1s to hit. And he shoots and he tries to thin out some of my zombies, which is a good move, and he gets some pretty good hits and wounds, and of course I don't have any armor save. And then when it comes to the pile-in, he gets up with his reavers on my archers. Now this is a really good move because he's got enough for 3 or 4 of these reavers to attack, and I have only 3 to attack back. But he decides to pile in on the side. You'll see how that works in just a second. But I think it was a 5 he had to roll to get his Silverhelms in on my ghouls, and he rolled a 4. So I was breathing a sigh of relief there, but this was perfect. This is what you want to do. You want to try and force your opponents to make hard decisions. Even with some of these supposed default rolls, they're going to fail some of them, and I think that's a good part of the game. Even if you judge it well, random stuff can happen. And while the competitive people are probably ripping their hair out about that comment, the idea that that these types of things happen, you have to plan for that. You need to be better at your game to prepare for the worst case scenarios, as opposed to maximize the best case scenarios. I like maximizing for the worst case scenarios. He failed here. Now he's going to be in a danger for a countercharge. You know, if the fact that he moved up to this point and he didn't get in on me, you know, it was a risk. But it should have been a gimme. In an 8th edition, I think this would have been a gimme. And because you're rolling dice and then adding it to a movement factor. Here, it's a random 2 dice. You want to try. Some of those are going to fail, no matter how fast or good your movement factor is. It's the dice, and unless you move up into 3 inches, even on snake eyes, you're going to fail. So you need to have that randomness in this game. That's what this game is about. You know, and if you can't accept that, then you probably shouldn't be watching this video or my channel at this point. All right, so he goes ahead and he piles in, as I was saying before, with a couple of his Reavers. Now, that's not a bad move because he's getting more attacks on a small frontage that small angle that I have with guys that can attack back. This is pretty smart, but I will get a pile in. The way the rules read, it's not who charges to get a pile in. You pile in when your turn comes with that unit. So you get a chance to then move in. But it's better for him to do this because if he gets early attacks, he can whittle me down much faster because he's got more guys within range to do attacks. And I think with these guys, it's 1 inch. So he goes and he attacks and he flubs. He doesn't get any wounds off. I go and I pile back in. Now, the way we've been doing it, I know some people probably who do understand these rules and have been watching are probably saying, well, that doesn't look like a pile in. It's not this cluster cloud. You know, we try to keep the trays in play and try to keep some cohesion that looked uniform as much as possible. Sometimes that's not going to work, especially when you do that pile in stuff and it gets a little crazy. But I like to keep that just because it's easier to look at. It's certainly better for a battle report, and it's easier to keep track of things. And then it doesn't become as messy. It takes longer for you to try and clean up the mess of the cluster. So I like to keep the moving trays as much as possible. But when I do that, and you'll see that on some of my videos, and what I do is understanding that some of the front rank guys can kind of move to the side, in the corners, and then the back rank guys can take their place. Within reason, I'll just take some of the back guys, the second or back rank guys, and then just move them to the side where that would be, rather than have to shuffle everyone exactly. As long as we know that that's what would have happened, it's just easier to do that. So you might see some of that in this video and others, but it's still effectively being the same thing, resulting in the same pile in and move forward, and the same amount of guys, within range to attack. So. So we go to what is this? I believe. Oh yes, we there was no other combat, so we have to take battle shock tests. Now, one of the things I had done incorrectly in early reports was we weren't taking battle shock tests for units that had taken shooting damage. It doesn't say that it's just close combat. It says any units that had taken casualties, not wounds, but casualties. If you have a unit, if you have any models removed, you're supposed to take a battle shock test. So if somebody shoots that unit and removes one guy, unless you're immune for some reason, for some effect or whatnot, you need to take a battle shock test as a result, and with one casualty obviously as a modifier. So I took some casualties on this. I passed it with my skeleton warriors, but I took quite a bit. I think it took maybe like 10 or 12 that I lost on this unit, and so I lost 3 more. Look, that's the way it works. The battle shock, it may be hard for vampire counts or undead in general, Tomb Kings as well, to lose models as a result of battle shock, but it does happen, especially if they take a lot of wounds off in one turn. So I now realize I need some reinforcements. I'm losing some mass on some of these units. I don't have anything overwhelming. His Silverhelms are about to get into combat. I need some help. So I roll and I throw down 2 dice. I only need a 5 to summon a unit of 10 zombies, but I rolled a 10. If you roll a 10 higher, you get 20 zombies. And that's great because now I get to summon them within 18 inches, but they can't be closer than 9 inches from any enemies. That really kind of limits me because I have my Necromancer a little bit behind enemy lines here. So I wanted to try and get them where they may be able to go after his wizard, or maybe even try to help out with the Illyrian Reavers, or maybe even try to help with the archers, with my skeleton archers, just in case those guys get are get in trouble. But the only place I could really position them where they were also 9 inches away that have any kind of impact on at this point was all the way to the far right, where I could probably get a bunch of these guys on the side of his Silverhelms, and I'm going to need help with those Silverhelms. So those Silverhelms are far, far more effective than my ghouls. My ghouls may get more attacks, but he has far better ability to dish out damage in terms of rolls to hit, and he has better armor saves, and I only have 6 ups. So I need more help. I need more bodies on the field, and that's the mechanic. This summoning isn't that out of control, but it is. You'll see how the game progresses. So I get these guys in there, and now, oh, by the way, the one thing that you should know is when you're summoning, those guys can't move, but they can charge. Obviously, 9 inches away from an enemy means it's a fairly long charge. You need a 9 on 2d6. And then, of course, if you make it, you certainly get more pile-in, but they can't make a move because this magic obviously occurs in the hero phase. All right, so we get down here, and I go and say, you know what, these skeletons are in trouble. I don't want to lose them. I want to be able to shoot. You can shoot in and out of combat. I know that's controversial for some people, but it works, and that's the rule, so that's how I'm playing it. So I put down that skull token I have is to signify what the inspiring presence is, and I use that because I don't want to lose any models from any wounds that I'm sure I'm going to take with the skeletons. So I then go ahead and move up my ghouls to get within and my other unit of zombies who've been thinned out, and I want to try and swarm, if I can, this unit of Silverhelms. If I can destroy this unit of Silverhelms, I believe I have the game. Even though shooting is very effective, and he has lots of shooting, and he has like 20 archers, it's not finishing off my units fast enough. He's not going to thin out. He's not going to destroy my entire block of skeleton archers before they can really restore themselves a little bit. I'm able to summon another unit back, and I can summon these other units as well, more than I think that he'll be able to shoot just with one block of archers. But these Silverhelms can just waste these guys, one of these units at a time. They'll overwhelm them, and in order to go fight them, I need overwhelming numbers on my side. So I go ahead and I get within range to go in and charge them, and then we have our attack with the archers and the Lyrian Reavers. So I start piling in as well on my side. I think I went first, so I decided let me get these guys in first. The more, if I can even do 1 wound to the Lyrian Reavers, I probably could start bleeding off a few more of them with battle shocks. I think he has like a 6 bravery. So it's harder to remove these guys because I've got 2 wounds. But the fact is, if I can get even 1 off, he's going to be in trouble, and that's of course less that he's going to have to worry about. He's going to be able to attack back with. So I'm trying to get. You can see I have one off over the north side of his unit, so I have more guys being able to attack, and of course I make it in with both my zombies and with my ghouls. Now take a look at this. Looks a lot like 8th edition type gaming, doesn't it? This is not so foreign. You don't have to have these cloudy clusters of skirmishing units. This is not that. This is uniform, and it's effective. There's going to be pile-ins. It can get a little messy, but then you reorganize as you move, and you get back into these formations and use your trays because it makes it easier to move stuff and it makes it faster. You're not moving 200 guys, each of them individually. I've heard people complain about that, and just a stupid comment. Yes, there is going to be some of it, but you're going to be able to use these trays if you try to keep these block formations. And guess what? Some of these block formations are more effective as block formations, but obviously, there's going to be more advanced stuff that I'm going to be introducing in future bat reps that deals with angles and different formations where you might have a cluster that lines up in weird diagonals out of the block of the unit, and you might see that here a little bit too. We did that with the archers, my archers as well. It does have an impact in terms of movement against your opponent. Here, I just want to get as many bodies as I could in on those Silverhelms. And, he had to make a choice with these Silverhelms when it comes to his combat. He could retreat, but then, of course, I'm forcing him then to lose a complete turn while then I try to whittle down and take out the rest of his army. So he's going to have to stick in there and do some damage. Fortunately, he has some really solid troops to do that. So, and I think I failed the charge with the zombies, so just to say that. So I do some shooting, and I shoot with my archers to try and just get him down below 20 with these, with his archers. My skeleton archers managed to kill off 2 of them, which is great. Now he doesn't have a +1 to hit, because I think he's at 18 now or something like that. And I think that might have been out of order. In any case, he goes ahead. We go and attack back. I think it did 1 wound on one of his Lyrian Reavers, and that looks like that's the case. Yeah, there's the green token that he puts in, and then he goes ahead and attacks back on the other side. He was able to pile in with his guys and kind of spread out and get more attacks as opposed to some of these guys being in the back rank. That's one of the benefits of that. and I lose a bunch of guys. So he splits his attacks, which you're totally able to do. He puts a bunch on the trying to thin out the zombie unit, because if they get too close with the other unit, I'm going to be able to merge. And I tried to get them where they were. I just didn't want to make them have it take so long before they got into combat. I probably should have and could have summoned them in the center and then just merged them with this unit. But again, I wanted to get more bodies on the sides and just kind of surround him. And then he wouldn't be able to even move, even if he wanted to retreat, because unless you fly, you can't retreat over or through any enemy models, unless there's a special rule for that unit. Standard units like cavalry or infantry can't do it. So he kills off a bunch of my zombies and 4 of my ghouls, and I don't think I was able to peel off any of his guys. He takes a battle shock test for his archers, loses 1 more guy. Now this is key. You want to be able to try and spread out your attacks and your shooting, so you at least do one casualty, apply 1 casualty to as many units as possible, because that'll force them to take tests and then bleed off more guys. So the fact that I had taken these 2 guys off, I got a bonus 1, and I think that was worth it. So he, when we go to his turn, he decides he's going to retreat. Now, he doesn't have a special rule where he can retreat and still shoot. The standard rule is you can't shoot, you can't charge. But he needs to get these Reavers out of there. If he does that, he's going to be able to charge and shoot in the following phase. So I'm able to neutralize these guys now this turn, and it actually saves me with these archers from taking further damage in hand-to-hand combat. So he moves these guys out. He's able to get 14 inches distance. I believe it was 14 inches, but the only stipulation is you have to be at least 3 inches away when you finish your move, and there's nothing that prevented him from doing it. It was a smart maneuver, but I was perfectly happy with that, because then my banner is able to restore, die 6 per turn, so I can get some guys back. But then he moves up his archers right up, stops 3 inches away, and again, if I didn't have these guys, the archers that swung out a little bit to get more bodies within 1 inch of him, he would probably be able to get a little bit closer. But this, 3 inches still was plenty. Elves are still fast movers. I think they move at 6. They move at 5. I could be wrong. But he's able to get these guys in there, and he's still able to shoot because they didn't run. Then he moves his wizard over. He's looking to just get within range of 18 inches at least of my necromancer, which is smart, because then he can cast Unbinding. I know a lot of people not happy about that, but sorry, that's the rule. There's certainly going to be other scenarios where I'm sure there's going to be characters or new war scrolls where people have longer ranges for these things, and there's other things that can affect that. But that's the way it works. Magic is that let's test these rules out and see how they work. So right now they're not game breaking as far as I'm testing it. So he gets within range, and that's another strategy. You've got to try. It's not a default thing. You've got to try a maneuver. This is what makes the game a lot more mobile. You can't just sit, have one caster and boom, as a default, he's able to cast. You've got to get within some substantial range, 18 inches, and be able to have line of sight. The line of sight one I don't like. That one I have to agree with. I think is a little too much, but that's the rule. I like the range one though. It kind of distinguishes between the wizards, and you can't just sit a wizard back in the background. They've got to get up closer to the action where there's threats. And it puts them at risk. But the line of sight one I think is a little much. But again, I'm playing it as it is, at least for now. So my archers, his archers shoot at mine. He certainly got superiority here. I think I lose like 4 or 5 of them. And then he's able to declare a charge, and with pile in, he's got a bunch of archers. But these guys are not meant for hand-to-hand combat. Same as my archers. And I have the you see that token there. Any casualties I take, I'm not going to take any additional battle shock. So I did that intentionally, and I'm glad I did, and I stick with that. So you can see that with additional pile-ins, there is no casualties were suffered in the previous slide. I wasn't able to do anything to his silver helms. Again, they got good armor saves. So he goes and he gets some attacks. Doesn't do I think he flubs against my skeletal archers, and then I lose another zombie and a few more of the ghouls. So the ghouls are starting to thin out, and I think I've done 1 wound to him at this point. I don't think I've taken any of these guys off. I may have taken 1. I don't know. And he passed his battle shock. So my turn comes, and I move up my zombies. Now, I need reinforcements, obviously. These units are not long for this world. He's lost maybe 1 guy, or maybe he's just taken 1 wound. I'm not counting it right now. But the idea is I'm losing guys faster than he is, without a doubt. And so I move these, I'm only 3 inches away. That's where you have to stop. So I should have default charges except for Snake Eyes. I did some shooting with my archers. Again, that's a rule that a lot of people are not happy with. I don't like the idea of being able to shoot in and out of combat, but that's the rule. So I shoot his Illyrian Reavers, and I managed to kill one. And I'm glad. I'm thrilled about that because he already had wound on it. I only needed to do one wound. He only had to fail one test. So I only had 4 archers, so I managed to get one. I'm thrilled. He has to take a battle shock test. Let's see how that turns out. And then I get my ghouls in. I didn't roll Snake Eyes. My zombies. And then I pile in, of course, to get as many guys in as possible. This is one where it was situations where I was able to use my little 2x2 unit filler to denote that there's 4 of those guys. And look, it's still a cohesive, organized. It looks, look like we have some battle lines here. It doesn't look that dissimilar from 8th edition here, guys. And it's not that hard, like these clusters and clouds that you see again. I know I'm like a broken record with saying it, but it's easy to watch. It's easy to keep track of, and it still falls in line with the rules. So it doesn't have to be, wacky or crazy. It certainly can get that way, but this is not an unattractive way of looking at the board. And it's a little more advanced, a little more complicated in terms of the strategy. Okay, so I lose a few archers in hand-to-hand. His archers are not meant for hand-to-hand combat, though. And even though I only have a 6-up to save, his dice are starting to fail him. His battle shock test at the end of this combat, he loses another Reaver, so bonus. He's only got 3 left. And here's the way the board looks at this point. So and my turn comes, and I'm able to get off finally. I'm able to summon, excuse me, another unit, and I'm able to get some more ghouls. I need some reinforcements. I'm losing my zombies. I'm losing my ghouls. And the zombies that I had summoned previously are not going to help. But I roll well again, and I get 20. So yay. But again, I'm kind of hampered by where I can put these guys. I could try and put them north of the Silverhounds and try and come back behind it, but I wasn't able to reach to stay within 9 inches. That's a big stipulation. It's 18 inches total, but by the time I measured it, I couldn't get further than 9 inches away there. And he's got some other units here. If I can hold them off long enough with those silver helms, I could probably do some serious damage with these guys on this side. Maybe finish off his silver helms or come and save the day with my skeletons. So I move up. No, I'm not able to move up. We get to charges, and this is a 9-inch charge. I make it with these guys. So I go after the silver helms. I don't think, I could have tried it with the against the archers, but I just didn't want to leave these silver helms out here. I wanted to get them off the board. So I managed to get that. And then my pile-in swarms, I use one of, obviously this is one of my big unit fillers. So it's actually a zombie unit filler, but it denotes 10 guys. And, look, we're not playing a tournament here. And even if we were, we know that they would have all filled in. I'm just using a big unit filler to denote, the guys that relatively where they were. We're on the honor system. If anybody was abusing, this type of stuff, I'm sure, we would have mentioned it. But we weren't overdoing it. So, I go and I attack, and I managed to get with all these attacks. I think I have like 30 attacks for the amount of guys that were able to attack. I think it was 15 with 2 attacks each. I take off 2 more of his Reavers, and then I'm able to pluck off 2 more of his archers. And look, those skeletons, they're hanging in there. I mean, they're still in there, man. And I still got, obviously you could choose which ones can go. So that banner is going to be the last thing that goes, because I can still restore as many as die, 6 a turn, die 6 every turn, every one of my turns, that is. So we get to the this phase. I put down my immune to battle shock onto the bigger unit of skeletons. I figured I'm going to lose some of the other units. I've already lost, the ghouls. I think that might have been the previous combat. So as you can see, when I did my pile-in, after his wiping out the ghouls, it opened up an open area where there wasn't any models. So my pile-in was able to shuffle everybody down to the point where these now are within an inch of each other. So now they're going to be, and I think it's at the start of my turn if this happens, they're going to be one solid unit. So this is not the case yet, but it will be in the following turn. And that can have an impact because, at every 10 increment, I get a +1 to hit and wound with the zombies. So you were able to merge them. And if I could summon another one, I can add that to that. Okay, so I lose one ghoul. I might have been from a casualty from him firing back and from battle shock. I'm not sure. So this is where the game, where we are now. So this is where everything stands, just as far as a reset is concerned. I'm kind of swarming him on his silver helms, but he hasn't taken a whole lot of casualties. But I'm starting to thin him out, at least with the Reavers, and if I can finish that one Reaver off, those ghouls can really put a hurt on the rest of those rest of his archers, and then hopefully maybe I'll still be in the game when I get to the Silver Helms, because I get a good 6-inch move with those ghouls. So hey, I lost another archer, and he's starting to swarm around me, but I still got 2 archers in the game, man. They're still surviving, thank goodness. And then he goes and he shoots. I think this is obviously his turn now. He goes and he shoots. Instead of going after the archers, which I think he should have, he's trying to pluck off those some more of the zombies. And and I think what he tried to do is he tried to shoot with the Reavers against these skeletons, and then his archers could shoot against the zombies and try to remove them. But it wasn't really working out in terms of his rolls. I finished off the last Reaver, so now these ghouls are now free up in my turn to now move back towards the center and help out. And again, he's swarming around them. I got 2 of these. He's just clustering around them. I know this is a little ugly, but this is how the game works. And of course, if he wipes me out, he can just reposition them on the tray any way he wants when he starts moving them again and put him back into a uniform block formation as he wishes, or in a wedge, or in a line, or whatever he wants, as long as they don't move further than they're allowed to in their movement value, whether it's a run or a standard move. But he's able to finish off the final numbers of my archers. But hey, these guys were the MVP of my game. They managed to stick in there much longer than they should have. Probably they were outnumbered. They did some good damage. They didn't have a huge impact on the game, but they were able to really hold him up and really give him fits. And a lot of that was probably from his dice rolling. So goodbye, archers. I can't summon any more of them, but I've been focusing more on the skeletons anyway. Not skeletons, ghouls anyway, because they just have more attacks. And if they can get into the combat, they could do a little bit more damage. At least that's how I was viewing it. And then, of course, some of the zombies, because they can merge. So we get to this combat. Again, I think I may have done one. I've removed 1 model now of his, maybe 2 at most. Again, I'm not counting. But he's starting to thin out these ranks. He goes and he piles in. And I believe this is his turn. That was the result of the last combat, I believe. So he goes and he moves up his archers. He gets the next turn. So he got. I don't know if this was 2 turns in a row just from memory, but this is the beginning of his next turn. He goes and he starts moving the archers up so that they can get a little shooting off, and then of course get within charge range. But he has to stop 3 inches away, and you can see he reformed into kind of a little bit of a block formation. So he goes and he shoots at my wizard, and he's able to connect, and he only does 1 wound to me. I lose 3 of my the zombies. I think it's I'm not sure if that was from shooting, where he split his shooting. I don't remember what that was from, I'll have to be honest. But in any case, he goes ahead and that might have been his caster doing one of those arcane bolts. I don't remember, but I lost a few of the zombies. It might have just been out of order and I left them there. So when he goes ahead and after he's shooting, he charges the nearest models, and that's another thing that you've got to remember. If you're not familiar again with these rules and you're just starting to get used to them, and you're watching my channel to try and get an idea of how this works, understand that when you pile in, it's to the nearest model, and that you can bait somebody where they're forced to pile in if they choose. You don't have to. You're not required to pile in, but if you charge, all right, your pile in on your models is to the closest enemy model. So the fact is that he could have charged my necromancer, but some of his models would have had to pile in, as long as he has to keep unit cohesion, but they're closer to my zombies, and some of them would have had to pile in towards my zombies. So there's ways, again, that you can kind of stretch your opponents out and force them to make decisions. It didn't really come into major play here, but something to consider, that pile in, if you choose to pile in, there is a requirement of where you're piling into, and where you position your troops versus your enemy's troops in that regard has an impact. It also has an impact as you go through the combat, because you get to choose where your casualties come from. So if you pluck off casualties closer to a unit that hasn't attacked yet, they may not be able to pile in because they may be out of 3 inches range once they get to use that unit. So something to consider, another depth of the game that people don't consider when they just read, supposedly just 4 pages of rules. There's a lot more than just that. Okay, so we get down to it, and I start losing guys. I'm losing. I mean, I have this nice big cluster now of zombies after I kind of merged them with another summon unit. But I'm losing zombies faster than he's losing anything else. So I'm in a precarious situation here. I've got a wounded, only 1 wound out of 5 on my necromancer, but I think I've got like 5 zombies left. And look, you see, he's got almost all his silver helms and quite a bit of the archers left. But my turn comes, so I move up my my ghouls and. I'm within a fairly long charge range. I think it's like a 9 or something along those lines after I did my standard move. But I gotta go for broke here. I mean, I need these guys to come in here and help. The only chance I have is for my necromancer to survive long enough to summon more units and hopefully take out as many of these archers as I can, and then try to overwhelm the Silverhelms. So I actually charge in my necromancer. I'm not worried about the necromancer necessarily losing lots of. He has more wounds, and there's not a lot of these guys that are attacking him at this point. But I mean, I absolutely need to start doing some damage to these. If I fail the charge with the ghouls, I need to do some kind of wounds to try and force him to bleed off from battle shock some of his archers. But I make it in. You'll see that in just a second. He goes ahead and he files in around the zombies. We trade off. I start losing more. He then piles in with. I lose most of my zombies now. I think I have 2 left. He then piles in with his archers. He gets more within range to be able to attack my necromancer, but he really wants to finish off those zombies. So, and if he does, that frees up his reavers, because I think they're farther than 3 inches away from my necromancer, which means they wouldn't have to make a choice of retreat or fold in, and he wouldn't be able to get all these guys to pile in 3 inches to get to my necromancer. So he would have had to, he would have had to again, this would force him to make some decisions. So he wants to finish off those zombies. That gives him more freedom. Then I think, okay, so I have my and I'm not really sure. I think, let me go to the next slide here. Yes, so my turn comes up. I guess I survived with those zombies and with the amount of attacks that occurred. I'm able to put a charge in against his archers, and this is, I make it in. Whatever the roll was, I made it. They have the immunity to battle shock, because I know I'm going to take some wounds, and I'm kind of accepting that I'm going to probably lose my my zombies. Now, in the last couple of turns, you haven't seen me summon anything. I failed the summons. So I rolled 3s or 4s. It doesn't. It's not a guarantee, guys. Roll dice or the dice are the dice. They could have had a huge impact, but sometimes I made it, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I rolled enough to get, instead of 10, I got 20. Sometimes I got nothing. So it kind of evened out. Even on a 2 dice 6, the odds were in my favor. This game, I think I rolled about average, in terms of total numbers of troops that I was able to summon up. And you can see this is a fairly even battle so far. I'm losing a little bit, though. So my ghouls really go to town, and they just dish on these archers. And this is what I needed to do. Between the archers and my necromancer, who only has 1 attack, I took off, 8? That's going to really hurt him when it comes to battle shock. He goes and he does something smart. He repositions when he goes to fold in around the surviving zombies. He positions one of them, and we talked about this. I was giving him pointers as well because I'm a little more familiar with the rules than he is. I said, you have to fold in towards the nearest guy, but you have to keep unit integrity. I said, if you maintain unit integrity, and you have one guy that's next to where my ghouls are, when it comes to the next turn, if you have enough that are within 3 inches, you'll get more of your silver helms to be able to fold in, as opposed to if you put them all over where the zombies are. If I take casualties, I'm going to take some casualties off where you're going to be out of that range, and it won't be like a gimme where you just can fold some of these guys in and then do some damage. And it depends on what your thought process is. Could he have a charge? Then sure, but if he failed, he's out of luck. So you don't want to take those chances. It's a guarantee versus a slim chance of failure. I would always go for the guarantee, but again, sometimes big risk, big reward. So I lose my zombies. The zombies are gone. I can't summon any more now because I have no scroll on the table that has zombies. So none of my wizards now have the capability to summon them. I don't have any archers. I just have ghouls. Now I could summon more ghouls, but my dice aren't really helping. So we go ahead and we go through battle shock. I think we go through another round of combat, and he's lost even more of these archers. And when it came to battle shock, we knew that these archers were going to get wiped out, and we had to call the game because I was taking my family to go see Ant-Man, and we knew where this was going to go. This is how this game was going to progress, unless dice failed us both. What probably was going to happen here was his the archers, his archers are dead. We don't know who's going to win the next turn, so we're just assuming. He's going to lose his archers, but unless I can summon more units. And I think he might have been able. Had the next turn too. Unless I can summon more units, which is again no guarantee. And even if I did, those Silverhelms, I think maybe lost 2 or 3 at most, are going to walk through a lot of these units. I had 3 units on him at one point and still wasn't able to take him down. 2 units, good armor. 2 wounds, good armor. Hey, that's where the distinguishing factor is when it goes versus some of these infantry units. But I had summoning on my side to try and balance that out. I really believe that he would have probably swarmed in with his Silverhelms, killed off my Necromancer, and then I just would have 1 depleted unit of ghouls to try and survive, and then he would have won the game. So this definitely was a victory for the High Elves, but it was a challenging game and a game that used a lot of different maneuvers and a lot of different thought process to swing around and get flanks and maximize the number of guys, a number of models to get attacks on units. This wasn't just a swarm into the center and fight. This was a deep game, and this was only with 3 units, all core units, and 1 wizard each, and no formation benefits. We didn't use any terrain. Basic game, enjoyable game on both sides, and we had a lot of fun. I'm glad that I was able to show. Again, one of the guys that frequents the circles that I frequent, but is also a competitive type player. He likes these types of games, a little softer and when it comes to fluff and narrative than some of the uber competitive players. But he goes a lot. He goes to tournaments. He's part of a group, team that travels with some other very tough and smart competitors. He's done very well against some top competition at GTs. He's a solid player, and he came away with very, very positive thoughts about this. Obviously, we didn't go and test a lot of the crazy. This was an introduction to him, as I would hope it is to you, to give you a sense of what Age of Sigmar is, as opposed to what it is not. So, thank you for tuning in, and have a great day, everybody.